What's up, everybody? Eric here from That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in this evening with me. We are going to be going over AEW Dynamite for February 26th, 2020. But before that, I just got a few announcements, and I got to actually plug in my headphones here because that'd probably be useful. If you are interested in being a co-host of this show, you can shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. I'm looking for co-hosts for AEW, for New Japan, if you want to do both. If you just want to be a fill-in when I don't have anybody, but right now I don't have anybody, so it'd be nice to get somebody. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can check this out as a podcast on all your favorite podcast apps, or you can head over to thatswrestling.com. If you are listening to this as a podcast, you can head over to YouTube and subscribe to the That's Wrestling channel. The link is also in the show notes as well. Go over there because I do this show live, so you can participate if you would like to in the chat and whatnot, and you can listen to this live. And I believe that is pretty much it for any announcements that I have. So, do I have a cat? Okay, I thought I had a cat meowing. So this is the go home show before Revolution, and I have to say, this show was awesome. I don't think there was like anything bad that happened on this show. I do have a little comment on something that didn't happen, but really it's not a huge deal. I'd rather them not do it than screw it up or do something stupid, I guess. So I guess there's a silver lining there. But this show was super strong going into Revolution. I'm really looking forward to the matches over there during that show. So first off, commentary just welcomes everybody. So we have that, and they run down the card for the night. And that has been a running theme every week. They have been doing this, which is exactly what they need to do. So good to see it. So opening match, I was not sure where they were going to put this. They put Kenny Omega versus Pac first up, the 30-minute Ironman match. They actually showed a poster in the crowd that said Kenny Two Belts because he is the a tag champion right now, and I guess they want him to become the AEW champion at some point. I'm guessing that is what that is a reference to. The Young Bucks actually came down to the ring with Kenny Omega, so very reminiscent of all of Omega's big matches in New Japan. They come out to support him, so that was cool to see that there's the cohesiveness between those three. Hangman was nowhere to be found. The match started off with some chain wrestling, and then they just start laying in strikes, and this match goes crazy, and it was a very fast-paced match the entire half hour. I can't believe it was a half hour because it felt so much shorter, because there was always stuff going on. They had everybody sucked in. The crowd was super hot. After the chain wrestling, Omega immediately goes for a one-winged angel, but Pac moves it into a brutalizer, and Omega manages to kind of run back first into the turnbuckle to break that up. Omega ends up hitting a Rise of the Terminator, and Omega's rear end landed directly on the concrete, so not a whole lot of broken his fall, but he seemed to be okay. Omega misses a You Can't Escape, and then hits a Snapdragon on Pac. Pac gets caught by Omega when he's doing a moonsault off the apron to the floor, but Pac actually manages to reverse the reversal into a DDT on the floor, and at one point Pac hits an avalanche brainbuster. So off the top rope, he hits a super high angle brainbuster. The crowd chants "Holy shit!" Says it was a huge spot. Pac hits a crazy slingshot cutter at one point. Omega hits a wicked push kick into the turnbuckle on Pac. They exchange strikes some more. Pac hits the snap German off the ropes that he likes to do. Omega hits two V-triggers, then a Tiger Driver 98 for a 2 count. They had the crowd in the palm of their hand at this point. It was so loud. Pac gets out of a one-winged angel, but Omega ends up turning that kind of like into a suplex with a high stack for a 2 count. Again, a very close near fall. V-trigger to the back of the head. Omega gets Pac up on his shoulder and actually starts climbing up the ropes like he's going to do a one-winged angel, but Pac reverses that into a powerbomb. And then here's where the story of the match gets a little strange. Pac goes outside, goes under the ring, and grabs a chair and hits Omega with the chair, and the ref calls for a DQ. So this is how they do the first DQ in AEW, is during this Ironman match. They had it so there was a 30-second interval between falls, so there was like a 30-second rest period, though Pac did attack Omega again during that break. The crowd chants, "You killed Kenny." So I thought this was a good way to do the first DQ. It was not the end of a match, and really in the end it didn't play into the finish of the match. So it kind of works out that, oh yeah, you can get DQ'd, but Pac kind of used this as leverage and took the deliberate DQ with the hopes of being able to hurt Kenny enough to get more falls on him later, which of course right after the 30-second break, Pac hits a black arrow and gets a pin. So immediately it's already 1-1, but the audience ends up chanting bullshit at this point. So because it was kind of a little bit of a cheap way to do it, and really it just tied it right back up. So we're kind of back at the beginning again. Pac climbs up to do another black arrow, but Omega ends up rolling to the outside. Pac runs Omega into the barricade on the outside. There's 12 minutes left at this point, and Pac throws Omega back into the ring. Pac gave a crazy Falcon Arrow off the apron to the floor to Omega. I said out loud, "Oh my God," when I saw it happen. And the ref calls for the doctor because it looks like Omega is favoring his leg, like he hurt his quad or something like that, which then that actually sets up Omega getting up onto the apron and Pac hitting him with a drop kick, so he sends him off the apron, which then he hits the ref, and the ref gets taken out with this ref bump. And Pac goes to set up a table on the outside, puts Omega on it, and he does a shooting star press off the top rope to the table on the floor. He kind of got just maybe from the bottom of his ribs up, landing onto Kenny, so the table did break, but it was kind of an awkward landing, and just kind of how it worked out, one of the pieces flipped up and smacked Pac in the face, but he was fine. He wasn't cut up or anything like that. The ref finally rolls back into the ring and starts a double 10 count on the two who are laid out on the outside. Pac makes it in. Omega barely makes it. It was actually pretty late. The ref gave him a little extra leeway on that 10. Also, Matt had to give him a little bit of a shove to get him into the ring. Omega hits a couple of V-triggers, then a huge Uranagi for a 2 count. Omega hits another V-trigger and lifts Pac for the one-winged angel, but Pac counters into a poison Rana off of the top of his shoulders. Pac hits this huge swinging DDT, puts on the brutalizer in the middle of the ring. There's 2 minutes and 45 seconds left in the match at this point. Omega manages to get over to the ropes to break up the submission. Omega kind of rolls away back into the middle of the ring. Pac just jumps right on him, puts on the brutalizer once again. There's a minute 30 at this point. Omega is fighting. They're fighting with hands, so he hasn't completely locked in the brutalizer. Omega rolls Pac into a pin, and Pac kicks out. He keeps the brutalizer on. Omega hangs on until the time limit, and at that point, they call it a draw. Pac is pissed. He gets up and gives the ref a huge forearm and knocks down the ref. Of course, then Justin Roberts gets word from the back, and he announces that this match will continue as a sudden death. So from there, because of that, Aubrey actually runs down because the original ref is completely knocked out. There's actually a huge Aubrey chant. And then Omega hits a ripcord knee, then a Kamigoye, then a one-winged angel, and Omega picks up the victory at that point. So it was a very, very good match, and it was a half-hour Ironman match, so it actually went about 33 minutes or so after the restarting of the match and whatnot. Might have gone a little bit longer, but this match was amazing, and this is the Kenny Omega that I expected to see when AEW started, and this is the Kenny Omega that I have been wanting for. Also, it was a nice thing to see him use the Kamigoye, which his friend Kota Ibushi uses over in New Japan as his finisher. And after the match, I believe they went to commercial. Not a whole lot happened in the commercial. I'm watching the fight feed, so I get to see everything that was happening. And Tony is up at the top of the ramp to get a word with Pac. Pac is not happy about the questions. And then Orange Cassidy comes out. And I'm pretty sure Pac dropped 2 F-bombs here on the live mic, because that's what I heard, at least. It might have been bleeped over TNT, but on Fight it was not. He said, "What the F do you want? F you." And then Pac decks Orange Cassidy, and that gets broken up. So it looks like we're going to be heading towards a Pac Orange Cassidy match. Lexi is outside of Jericho's dressing room, and it says Painmaker Posse on the door. She knocks. Jake Hager answers the door, but he doesn't say anything. He just looks at her, takes a glance at the camera, and then just turns around and closes the door. So that was the end of that. She doesn't get the interview she was looking for. Next up, we have a match of Santana, Ortiz, and Sammy Guevara versus the Jurassic Express. All 3 members, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt. Right off the bat, Jungle Boy attacks quickly. Luchasaurus gives a kick to Ortiz. Marco hits this huge double missile drop kick, and then Jungle Boy hits a couple of dives, and then basically Marco takes all the heat for a very long time through the entire commercial break. He is getting beaten on and beaten on and beaten on. Eventually, Luchasaurus gets a hot tag, takes out Sammy, then Santana, and then Ortiz. He hits a fossilizer on Santana and then a choke slam on Ortiz. Sammy gets beaten down by the Jurassic Express. Marco breaks up a pin on Jungle Boy at one point later on. Luchasaurus does a moonsault from the apron to the floor on Santana and Ortiz, but his knee crashed right down on Marco as well. That probably did not feel very good. It is like a direct hit directly on Marco. Sammy grabs the slapjack, or whatever you want to call it, the sock filled with baseballs or whatever they claim is in there. But as he's about to wind up and swing, Darby Allin appears and grabs the sock away and takes it away. Jungle Boy hits a snap Rana and picks up the victory. So the Jurassic Express have picked up a victory here over a Inner Circle faction. And Allen, of course, got in on Sammy. Allen ends up backdropping Sammy over the top rope onto Santana and Ortiz, who catch him after the match is over when Sammy tries to attack Darby Allin. Darby Allin has some cue cards. It says in 3 days in Chicago at Revolution. And then before he flips to the last card, you guys probably didn't hear this if you're watching TNT, but in the arena, they were chanting, "Darby's gonna kill you, Darby's gonna kill you." And that's what that delay was before him flipping to that last card, of the last card being "the coffin will drop." So they are obviously hyping up that match, so that's going to be a big one. Then we have a video package which basically outlines the entirety of the MJF Cody saga, all the way up from before Full Gear, before all that happened, all the way up to today. And this is kind of the one place I had a little bit of a concern, I guess, was that they did not have MJF or Cody in front of the live audience, and they actually did not do anything new. I was expecting maybe MJF was going to try to figure out his last way on trying to get out of this match, because that last stipulation of Cody can't touch him before the match if he wants the match to happen, figured be trying to goad him into hitting him or something like that during the show, but neither made an appearance on the show. No backstage segment, no nothing other than this video package. So I guess it's better than them screwing it up at this point and just leaving it off at the cage match. Of course, one thing that did come up out of that cage match is doing the moonsault off the top of the cage. Cody did actually break a toe, but I'm sure he's just going to fight through that at this point, because, I mean, what are you going to do? And so that was the big thing. And also, Tony Khan had tried to talk him out of doing the moonsault. And another reason why it was so quick, that he climbed quickly and did the jump quickly, was not because they were running low on time. It's because he is scared of heights, and he just needed to go up there and do it and not think about it. So that's why he climbed the cage quickly and immediately did the moonsault quickly. So a funny insight around that spot, and a few things that happened. Next up, we have Best Friends with Orange Cassidy versus Butcher and Blade with Bunny. Orange Cassidy and the Bunny are not in the match. They just accompanied their respective teams down to the ring. Blade takes out Chucky T right away. Butcher attacks Trent from behind immediately as the match starts. Chucky T gets a tag in after Trent is worked over for a while. Best Friends at one point hit Soul Food in half and half. It was actually a pretty good match. Good action from both teams back and forth. Eventually there's a spot where the Bunny and Orange Cassidy end up in the ring. Bunny steals Orange Cassidy's sunglasses. She goes to kick him in the nuts, but he catches it. Orange Cassidy steals her bunny ears and puts them on himself. And then she tries to kick him after that, and he kind of like throws her foot aside. She spins around, and then he actually does a dive to the outside, taking out the Butcher, which causes the distraction there. And then Best Friends hit Strong Zero and pick up the win. So this is a very... Well, actually, and Orange Cassidy was selling his jaw from being punched earlier by Pac. So they're still using Orange Cassidy pretty much perfectly. The pop for him is insanely loud. Reports out of the venue were that a lot of people were buying Orange Cassidy merchandise. But so far, I have not had any problem with how they've used Orange Cassidy. I thought it's been really good. And if anybody's actually seen his matches, you would know he can go. And if you haven't seen, this guy is really good in the ring when he's going, into basically a regular match, and he's not kind of doing his sloth style or whatever. After the match, Tony announces that it is going to be Orange Cassidy versus Pac at Revolution. So that has been confirmed from the previous confrontation that they had earlier in the night. Chucky T says they're happy, they're back to their winning ways. And then Chucky T says Pac messed up because Orange Cassidy is going to try. And then Trent butts in and says that, well, he didn't tell them that. He might not try. And then I believe this was all during commercial, but I was falling out of my chair laughing. I wish everybody got to see this, but Tony participates in the Best Friends hug with Orange Cassidy and Chucky T and Trent. Also, Orange Cassidy gives Tony his sunglasses, and Tony gives the weak thumbs up, and I was laughing hysterically because it was very, very funny. Next up, we have a 4-way match. This is in the women's division. It was Yuka Sakazaki, not Michael Nakazawa, versus Big Swole versus Shanna versus Hikaru Shida. This actually match was not too bad. It was a little bit messy in spots. I mean, it was a 4-way, but I think it worked out pretty well. There was some pretty funny... Actually, Yuka was doing some pretty funny spots. She broke up a 3-way test of strength in a pretty funny manner, and she actually had a few pretty funny moments, and it was just entertaining. At the end of the match, Hikaru Shida finishes off with a Falcon Arrow using Yuka onto Big Swole. She pins both of them at the same time. Both of them kick out, and then Yuka kind of rolls away, and then Shida ends up hitting the running knee strike on Big Swole and pins Big Swole for the win. Like I said, it was a pretty good match. It didn't go very long. It was about 8 minutes, but it was a 4-way, so it was pretty much nonstop action the whole time. And Yuka Sakazaki has some great spots, and the crowd was really behind her, and they're just there's a few goofy things, and I thought it worked out pretty well. Next up, there is a quick Dark Order video. They say that the Exalted One is near. They mention that they will be facing Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian at Revolution, and they will be proving to Christopher Daniels that he is obsolete. So, of course, I'm assuming this is another huge red herring, that it may be a reference to Matt Hardy using obsolete, but I'm going to guess that it is not going to be Matt Hardy, who is the leader of the Dark Order. Plus, Matt Hardy's contract is not over until Sunday, which is after the pay-per-view. So I'm guessing the Exalted One will be revealed at the pay-per-view. That would kind of make the most sense. But if it doesn't happen at the pay-per-view, then I guess all bets are off at this point. But I think they've just been throwing out all these red herrings that are not going to come true. I don't think it's going to be Christopher Daniels. I don't think it's going to be Matt Hardy. And I don't think it's going to be Raven. So I think these are all things that they've purposely put out in front of us to completely throw off who it actually is. And we might actually get a big surprise. One name that has been left out of the conversation over the past couple weeks, and it could be in design by setting up all these much bigger red herrings and completely ignoring any reference to him at all, is Brody Lee, or the former Luke Harper, as I believe his 90-day no-compete is coming up as well. So, but I don't think his is up until March 10th or 12th or something around that. So, but he is another possibility, and that's somebody I think has kind of slipped people's minds at this point, but it is another possibility. But of those 4, I think he would be the most likely, but I think I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say it's not going to be any of those 4, and it's going to be somebody that nobody's even been talking about being as such. So we will see how that ends up turning out. Next up is a really, really good segment. It's a sit-down interview with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega with JR, and then both of the Young Bucks. And throughout this entire segment, Hangman Page is looking kind of miffed on a lot of the comments that are made about the Young Bucks being the best tag team in the world, and even Omega acknowledging that the Young Bucks are the best tag team in the world, and that, in short, their title reign as tag champions was very circumstantial or situational, I guess, that they just kind of happened to luck into it. Matt is talking about, we're all friends here, but of course we're all competitors as well. The difference is that at the end of our match, we're going to shake hands and be friends. Of course, Hangman has a drink in hand while this interview is going on. Eventually, Matt kind of makes a comment about it, but he's also talking about, you guys are our best friends in the world. Our family. We probably see you more than anything else. And then Paige, JR asks Paige, you seem uncomfortable, and Paige kind of mutters something along the lines of, well, yeah, they're trying to take this away from me. Meaning the title, and that it's important to him, obviously. So it's something he doesn't want. He is. I can't think of a good word for this, but he is upset about who he's going to be facing, but kind of like the audacity of them to even be willing to have this match against their friend to try to take something important away from who is their friend. So Paige also has a comment about the Elite, and that he's been trying to get out of the Elite and trying to leave you guys for months. And of course, Matt at one point eventually says, after all that we've done, you're going to say that after all that we've done for you. And I don't know if it was Nick or Matt, but they basically said, after you were just a jobber in ROH and we invited you into the Bullet Club and we brought you on to being the Elite and we made you a star. So it was kind of a bit of a heel twist at this point from the Young Bucks, using this kind of language and taking credit for Hangman Page's success and him becoming a star. And obviously, in real life, that is a bit true. But obviously, Hangman would not make it where he is if he didn't have all this talent anyway. So they just helped along, and so obviously there's a little bit of truth behind that. But it's not something that you would say to someone you would consider your best friend. You wouldn't try to cut them down or use something like this from the past to try to cut into them. And so it was a little bit of that heel vibe at this point from Matt and Nick. And then Paige says that, oh well, my drink is empty, so I'm gonna go. So he gets up and leaves, and all of them are kind of looking concerned at this point, and that's kind of the end of the segment. So very good building up to the match. Obviously, there hasn't been a huge build-up because the Young Bucks were only made number one contenders last week, and Omega and Hangman had a match against the Lucha Bros for the tag titles in that last week as well. So they had those big matches that they had to get through before this match could even take place. So the build is short, but in this 1 week, in this one segment, everybody has kind of their cards laid on the table, and you kind of understand everybody's motivation at this point. You have Hangman Page that is kind of perturbed about his friends wanting to take the title that means so much to him away. We have and Omega, well, Hangman, having a problem with Omega being so friendly with the Young Bucks as being those two who want to take his title away as well, and kind of like the divided loyalties of Omega. And then Omega has the conflict of those divided loyalties himself. And then the Bucks seem very loyal to Omega, and then just kind of have this conflict with Hangman, even though they don't want to have the conflict with Hangman, and they are concerned for him and what's been going on, but he just doesn't believe it and is kind of throwing it off or throwing it back in their face, something along those lines. So just in this one segment, we learn a ton, and going into this match at Revolution, we have everybody's motivations on the table at this point. So a very good segment, and I'm glad they keep doing these types of sit-down interviews. These interviews with Tony over the past few weeks, they have been great, and I'm glad they're continuing those. The interviews with Tony and Britt Baker have been excellent. Tony has a couple different ones in this evening. He had one with Orange Cassidy and Best Friends, and then he had one with Pac. And then, of course, JR has the sit down here, and then JR had that sit down with Santana. That was excellent as well. So very good direction that they've been going in so far. Let's see. During the commercial, we have everybody's coming down to the ring. You guys probably didn't see this. Also, they had a couple ring girls come out as well, and JR says, "Holy shit, what's that?" And I'm not sure what he was referencing because it happened right as the ring girls were walking out, and they were the ones on screen, so that's what was probably on his monitor as well. So it could have been just mentioned to these very attractive ladies who were coming down, or there was another half of a conversation that was happening in his headset, and we just were not privy to it, to the people in the back. So this is to set up a weigh-in between Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho. Then we had Gary Michael Cappetta come down. He is a very old school wrestling announcer in the late 80s, early 90s in WCW and the AWA and all that. So if you are not familiar with him, he goes back pretty far to the early 90s. I think he left the WCW somewhere around the 94, 95 mark, somewhere around there. When Moxley was coming down to the ring, JR made a very interesting comment. He said he had a rattlesnake mentality. So a bit of a Stone Cold reference right there. Jericho and the Inner Circle come down with matching tracksuits with Painmaker Posse on the back and come out kind of mockingly, or not mockingly, but just how like the Gracies came down during some of their UFC entrances and whatnot, holding each other, holding the shoulders of the person in front of them, kind of walking in a line. Jericho ends up taking offense when Gary asks him to weigh in first and says, no wonder WCW went out of business, even though he was gone long before WCW went out of business. Jericho, after Moxley weighs in, Jericho just delays and delays and delays on stepping onto the scale. First, he's like, oh, I need to take my watch off, and he steps away. And then he's like, oh, I need to take my bandana off, and steps away. So, like, he gets up there, and he's like, oh, man, I left my track jacket off. So he's just, like, delaying and delaying and delaying. The audience starts yelling something at him, but I can't figure out what they're actually yelling at him. He grabs the mic and tells them to shut their ass, and then they start doing the Chiefs Tomahawk chant, or singing, and Jericho grabs the mic again and says that Mahomes is a piece of shit, and that, of course, gets a bunch of boos. Moxley then headbutts Jericho right on the bridge of the nose and busts him open hard way. I watched it a couple times to check to see if it was hard way, and then today, if you've seen the photos, Jericho got like 11 stitches right on the bridge of his nose, and that's definitely not somewhere where you would purposely like blade or whatever. So it was definitely hard way. So he had a bunch of stitches today, but I think it actually added. Accidentally, it was a happy accident. It's like Becky Lynch getting her face busted in by Nia Jax. It just suddenly, it was such a great accidental visual, and it made it, in that case, Becky Lynch even bigger. Or in this case, it just brought even more into this, even though it wasn't supposed to happen. It just was kind of one of those happy accidents. Dustin then runs out and attacks Jake Hager. They fight through the crowd out onto the concourse. Once again, JR yells, "Not the Dippin' Dots!" And then they're fighting. Jake Hager throws Dustin into the wall, and then he gives him a knee to the balls and then throws him into the Dippin' Dots cart, or into the side of it, basically. And later he's like, the Dippin' Dots didn't do anything to anyone. So I thought it was a very funny thing. Some people might not have gotten it, but it was actually a callback to when Cody went up to the skybox and punched in the window on the door and got in, and then hit him and MJF and Dustin go fight out into the concourse with the rest of the Inner Circle. So it's a callback to that because they ended up fighting over into the Dippin' Dots area, and I think one of them got their head smashed on the Dippin' Dots counter. So it was a callback to that concourse fight as well, if nobody else picked that up. While that was going on, back in the ring, Darby Allin runs down, and he has a skateboard, but Sammy kicks him with a running knee before he can before Allin can get any strikes in. Sammy then grabs the skateboard and just brains Allin over the head with the flat of the skateboard and ends up breaking the skateboard. I'm assuming they had it gimmicked beforehand, because that would be very, very hard to do against somebody's head. But it was a great visual once again with a skateboard that is bent right in half in the middle of the board. And then Jericho and Moxley are brawling. Jericho goes for the paradigm shift, but Santana runs in and hits him with a low blow or takes out his knee, kind of a combination of both. And then Jericho hits the Judas effect on Moxley, and then he gives Moxley the paradigm shift on the scale platform, mostly on the scale platform, and then stands tall over him, holding his arms up, bleeding from the bridge of the nose, and putting his foot on top of Moxley, and that is how the show ended. Wow. That is how you do a go-home show. All the angles are set up for the most part. There is just really one match that they haven't really talked about, but we'll see. So right now on the card, we have Orange Cassidy versus Pac, which I think is going to be a really, really fun match. I don't think we're going to have any of the shenanigans of an Orange Cassidy comedy match. I don't think you're going to see Pac doing that stuff or anything like that. This is going to be a high-flying, hard-hitting match, I believe, and it could be the surprise of the night, being a very, very good match. We also have Sammy and Darby Allin. That is set up, of course. Sammy was involved in smashing Darby Allin's throat with a skateboard with the Inner Circle a few weeks back, and that kind of set up this whole thing. So actually, going back to the Pac Orange Cassidy match, I think Pac is going to win this eventually, but Orange Cassidy is going to put on one heck of a showing, I believe, and we'll see how that goes. As far as Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara, again, I think Allin's probably going to take it here. Just because he's been getting rebuilt back up, and really the sky is the limit for this guy in AEW, and I'm looking forward to seeing more and what he can get out of here. And of course, Sammy is just awesome, but yeah, and both of these guys are just really young, and these guys are going to be the future stars of AEW if they stay loyal to AEW. Not saying they can't leave AEW if they want to, but I believe both of them would be much better well served in AEW than the current iteration of WWE. Then we have Dustin Rhodes versus Jake Hager. Again, Jake Hager's first official one-on-one match, or official match at all, in AEW. This is going to be against Dustin. Of course, he broke in storyline, of course, Dustin's arm many weeks back, and when Dustin came back from injury, he's kind of been hunting him down and taking his frustration out on Sammy a couple times, and they've gotten in little tiffs on the outside of those matches, and then of course at the end of this show they're kind of brawling. I'm assuming that Jake Hager is going to go over here. Dustin is so well loved at this point that him losing a match here is not going to be a huge deal, and building up Jake Hager as the Inner Circle's muscle is probably a better use of this match. Then we finally get into our title matches here. Of the 6 announced matches that we have Chris Statlander versus Nyla Rose for the Women's Championship. This hasn't really been built up at all, really. I believe there was a thing on YouTube or on the Hype show last night, which I haven't watched yet, so I'm guessing they might have done a little bit here. But again, this is kind of a match that was kind of just barely scheduled because it hasn't been long from Nyla taking the title, so there wasn't a whole lot of time to set up anything. And also, I believe that Chris Statlander missed a show this week. She was supposed to be on a bar wrestling show, I believe, on Wednesday, and she actually had the flu, so she couldn't make it. So hopefully she is okay by 2 days. So she's got 2 more days to get over it. So hopefully she is okay to go on Saturday night. So just be on the lookout for that, just in case she still has the flu and they might have to substitute somebody else. Hopefully it would be Hikaru Shida. I'm assuming she would be the next in line and the most logical to go next. It doesn't matter because I believe Nyla Rose is going to win this either way. But I really hope if Kris Statlander is in there, she has a really good showing and puts on a good performance. I hope both of them do. Nyla is obviously very green still, and I just have not been a fan of Nyla's work. And Kris Statlander is also green, but I think she has a ton of potential, but there have been some very sloppy spots that I've seen from her in AEW, and those just need to get tightened up a bit. But again, I'm going to go with Nyla Rose here on this one. Next up, we have Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega, who are the tag champions, against the challengers of the Young Bucks. In this match, I believe they're going to continue to hold off on the Ultimate Breakdown of Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. So I think Kenny Omega and Hangman Page are going to retain, but it is going, at the end of this, where there's going to be a very large riff in the Elite, and then that is going to kind of play into how we're going to be looking over the next 4 weeks or so, I'm guessing, at this point, of how it breaks down. I'm guessing that's kind of how long they're going to pace this storyline to continue, if they are going to the logical conclusion of Adam Page turning on the Elite, or the Elite turning on Adam Page. I could also see that happening. Either way, I think there's going to be a split of Hangman Page off of the Elite in either direction of who's going heel, who's going face, or if they manage to all stay babyface somehow. But I think it is going to ultimately be broken up at this point, or at least Hangman is going to break off the Elite, and we'll see. But I think the AEW Tag Champions will be retaining their titles. And that brings me to Moxley versus Jericho, which, of course, now that I'm talking about this, I'm almost talking myself out of my prediction. So I'll talk about it a little here. So with Nyla Rose retaining and Omega and Page retaining, that makes me think, is Jericho going to retain? Because if they're going to have all 3 titles being retained, that could be a little rough at a pay-per-view. Also, you'll be having the tag title match, depending on where it goes. Hopefully it goes in the order that I just went through them, and because that title match will have to be between Nyla Rose and Statlander, and the main event of Moxley Jericho. So I still don't. I am so up in the air on this one. They could go either way, and I'd be perfectly fine with this. You can make arguments either way. Jon Moxley is ridiculously hot right now. He is pretty much one of the hottest baby faces in the company at this point, if not the hottest. And it would make sense to put the title on him now. Obviously, Jericho has been doing his pretty much best work of his career, which is crazy given how long his career has been. So you could make the argument, well, just keep it on Jericho because he has been an awesome champion and has brought so much knowledge and experience to that title. And building up that title to mean something, I think, is a little bit of a higher priority than putting it over on Moxley, who is currently the hottest babyface. So, do they continue building the title, or do they put it on Moxley because he's hot? So this is where I am totally second guessing myself on the prediction of which way really any of these 3 titles goes. I'm pretty sure Nyla Rose is keeping the title. That's pretty much a given. But Young Bucks versus Omega and Hangman, do they switch the titles here or do they not? They haven't had the titles very long. I don't know. So really, I'm kind of questioning. I think the tag titles are going to be retained, and I think Jericho is going to retain the title. So I think all 3 titles in AEW are going to stay in the hands that they are in. Could be a little bit of a letdown for a pay-per-view crowd and a pay-per-view where there isn't a single title change, but I think that's just something that, it's going to happen. And it happens all the time on New Japan shows and whatnot, where they'll have 3 title matches and none of them will change hands. It will happen in real fighting as well. If you got a couple UFC championship matches, but both or I don't think they've ever had 3 in one night, but you have both of them retained, and that's just how it is. I mean, if they want to give it that sports odds feel, then it can happen that everybody retains their title. So I'm going with title retentions all around. So that is my prediction for Revolution. So we will see. So because Revolution is on Saturday night, I will be back here again on Sunday evening, maybe even Sunday afternoon, given my rundown of that show. If you haven't heard, New Japan is canceling all the first 2 weeks of March shows. So they're not going to have any shows until after the 14th currently. So we'll see if anything changes of that. But of course, that causes problems with the New Japan Cup tournament. But gives me a little bit more time to get caught up on what I haven't reviewed yet. So that's good. So it'll be interested to see what happens. So yeah, the virus is spreading. So Japan has also has announced this morning, I think, that they're shutting down all their schools for a couple weeks as well. So we'll see how that plays out. So that's all I have for you for this episode of That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said, if you are interested in being a co-host, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. You can check this out as a podcast if you're watching it on YouTube. If you're listening to this as a podcast, shoot over to YouTube. The link is in the show notes, and you can watch this show live. Make sure to hit that bell icon so you're notified when I go live, so you can join in the fun in the chat and all that good stuff. So until I see you next time, thanks for listening to That's Wrestling. See you guys.